Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Nerd Impact podcast. I'm Nathaniel. I'm here with Aiden, and I think we're discussing the Batman animated series. Could you fill us in a bit more, Aiden?
Yeah, cool. So, first ever podcast. Welcome, hopeful viewers, listeners. Before we dive in, thought it'd be good to talk about what the podcast is about. So, kind of in the name is Impact. Is looking at potential shows, movies, comics, books, right down to toys and music that have impacted us and both the wider world throughout the years. And we're both 90s kids, so I'd probably expect a fair few things to do with that. But yeah, welcome everyone. So today we are looking at Batman the Animated Series, episode 35 from season 1, titled Almost Got Him. This originally aired in November 1992. Interesting enough, when I was watching it on Blu-ray today, it's in production order, not episode release order. So actually on the Blu-ray it's 46. So it was produced later and released earlier, which was a bit confusing for me. So I'll quickly go through the cast and kind of name some of the stuff you might know them from apart from this. Kevin Conroy is essentially Batman. If you go on his IMDb, he's like in anything Batman related. This included, he's in some of the Justice League films. He's in the Batman Arkham games. So yeah. Then you've also got Kevin Conroy in the brand new 2021 Masters of the Universe series on Netflix. He plays Merman. And then the other quite interesting one was he was in the 2004 Static Shock show, and he played Batman again. We have one and only Mark Hamill as the Joker. Most people know him obviously as Luke Skywalker from the various Star Wars movies. I also personally know him from another favourite 90s show of mine, which is the Spider-Man animated series, where he plays the Hobgoblin. Very Joker-esque, but different in its own way, which is great. He also interestingly plays in the Masters of the Universe series of 2021, and he plays Skeletor, which is pretty awesome. I think I prefer Mark Hamill as a villain. I'm not going to lie, I prefer him much more as a villain than a hero. And then some other quick ones is he was the new version of Chucky in the 2019 Child's Play. Personally wasn't a fan, but I can't bash Mark Hamill for that. And then he was also in another DC property. He was in the 90s and the most recent incarnation of the Flash series, where he played the trickster in both, which I think is pretty cool. We've then got Arlene Sorkin as the famous first iteration of Harley Quinn. Again, not really much on her, what she's done. I think the most notable thing I noticed that I recognised her in was she was in the season finale of Frasier.
Oh,
Yeah, which is pretty cool. I love
interesting
Frasier.
position switch, really.
Just a bit. I'm not gonna lie. I'd love to see Kelsey Grammer in more superheroes. I love him as Beast. I think he'd be great in animated, especially. He's got a very
Beast, yeah.
beautiful voice. Yeah. Richard Mall is Two-Face. He again also is quite a big presence in the Spider-Man animated series. He plays Matt Gargan, aka Scorpion, which was awesome, and he also played Abomination in the 90s Hulk TV show. We then got Paul Williams as the Penguin. Couldn't really find much on him either, but he was in the Captain Planet show cartoon when he was younger, and he played Cujo. And then he was Elf in the Muppets Christmas TV special. So yeah, there was that. And I'll fly through the last few. So Aaron Kincaid was Killer Croc. He was various voices in the Flintstones kids show, and he was then Skylynx in the 86 Transformers cartoon. Diane Fishing, who played Poison Ivy, returns as Poison Ivy in the spin-off Gotham Girls, and then it was Dale Arden in the Flash Gordon TV show. And then finally, but not last but not least, is Adrienne Barbeau, who plays Catwoman. She is in a multiple amount of games, recent games. She was in Halo 4, Fallout 4, Fallout 76, and God of War 3. and she was also quite well known in Escape from New York as Maggie. The writer was Paul Dini, the director was Eric Radomski, and yeah, so kind of let's jump into it if you'd like to take over.
Well, that was quite the crop of voice acting talent for this episode. One of the things
Oh yeah, 100%.
I did also notice is the original theme song which we played at the opening of this episode was actually it was composed by Danny Elfman of Oingo Boingo
Yeah,
fame, the fantastic vocalist for Oingo Boingo, and he is a very well accomplished composer as well for many film scores. But it's interesting to see that this was one of his works as well. So I think we'll just sort of open with.
yeah. It was the '90s animated series took
Mhm,
massive influence from the Burton films, and obviously I think the theme tune was the most prominent, and probably
mhm.
the Batmobile, which I have a note on. I'll quickly just say I fucking love the Batmobile.
It's a very very cool iteration of it. I think very very sleek and definitely one of the more iconic versions of it. Um, but yeah,
Better than the 2005 Tumblr. That's what I'm
oh,
saying.
I think it's very, very hard to compete with the Tumbler, really. I think, when you have a tank compared to, a sports car, it's not really the same deal, is it? Um, but I guess,
Okay, that's true. I suppose of like sports car.
I guess we should just sort of provide a bit of a breakdown of the episode, really. I think just sort of,
Yeah.
what occurs and what it's all about.
Yeah, so this is probably one of the most well-known episodes of Batman the Animated Series. It's definitely one that stuck out for me, which is why I decided to choose it as our first episode.
Hmm.
So the synopsis I've almost got him is essentially um, five, I think it's five of Batman's rogues all are playing poker and talking about the time that they almost beat him.
Hmm.
It's very well written. It's divided quite nicely into segments and it's paced really well. Um, I won't go into too much detail, but
Hmm.
essentially you have Poison Ivy, um, Two Face, Joker, and the Penguin and Killer Croc, all talking about their stories, which we can dive into a little bit more separately afterwards.
Hmm.
Should we say the twist for now, or do you want to talk about it afterwards?
I feel like we should save it. We should go through it
Okay,
all and then
okay,
and really draw it out, get the most from it.
okay. So, what were your thoughts first of all? How did you think about it? Because have you watched this episode before?
This is the first time watching it, so I've seen the animated series before, but this is the first time seeing this episode. I
Okay.
really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was a very, very fantastic episode of what I would deem personally sort of classic Batman, a much more sort of like the way the villains are presented. There's no sort of like element of deconstruction or sort of realism. They are sort of larger than life characters, and so is Batman in this. And I think also, one of the things I did want to mention as well is that there's a lot of sort of subtle characterization that you notice within the sort of opening. As if the opening sort of shots are all framed around this poker game, and if you
Yeah,
notice, the Joker, as it shows his cards, you see him very subtly slipping a spare ace from out of his
yeah.
sleeve, and it's
I
stuff
did make notes about
you
that.
did make notes about that. Well, that was one
Yeah,
one of the first things I picked up on was just like, that was completely, effectively unnecessary because we know it's the Joker, but just to sort of see that sort of subtle flair of his conveyed across in what is a pretty basic shot of him just holding cards. It's quite impressively like the detail in which they're sort of communicating the character of these larger than life
yeah,
villains.
100%. And then you had Two Face. He always had two twos. That was
Mhm.
always prominent in his hand. It didn't matter what he had, he would have two twos, which was always quite funny. Um, to be fair, you talking about that, I know the first 2 minutes is essentially just dialogue and cards.
Mhm.
Um, and then I'd say that most of the episode was just the villains trying to basically have a dick measuring competition. It was who was better, and they were all
Yeah.
basically just trying to one up each other. And I absolutely love that because I think that's how Batman villains would absolutely go about it. They're not
Mhm.
about teamwork as such. They are occasionally, but it's always about who's the best.
No, and I think the card game is really, really effective for communicating that because there's a sort of like very, very thin veneer of hostility, sort of like permeating it all as we have these villains, as you said, we're all trying to one up each other, and even in the background we see a fight break out, and you can feel the sort of mounting
Yeah,
tension, I
that's
guess.
right.
It's really quite executed brilliantly, and most particularly as well, as you mentioned, the sort of framing of the shots. You know, as we get a lot of close up of cards and stuff, and a lot of it is very very dialogue heavy, but the dialogue itself is really quite fantastic, particularly the Joker.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's the cast that made the show so memorable, and I think I wrote it down quite a few times, but Mark Hamill's Joker is by far the most encapsulating in this episode.
Hmm.
Essentially, all he does in this episode is rile villains. There's barely any moment where he's not just trying to take a jab at someone. I think my
Hmm.
favourite line in it was when Penguin was using a load of like charismatic, quite intelligent words.
Hmm.
Joker literally was just like, um, "Store the words, you're losing Croc," and then Killer Croc's like, "Oh," and I was like, "Yep, that is the Joker through and through."
Yep, yep, very much so.
That was also a very terrible Joker impression, so I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, we've all got to have our moments in the sun with a Joker impression. It's pretty universal.
True, that is. So yeah, if we look at, do you want to go through the segments, or do you just kind of want to say which ones you like the most, which ones you like the worst?
I think maybe just providing a brief overview to sort of to give us an impression of how each villain sort of fares against uh, Batman
Yeah.
himself, you know?
So it starts with Poison Ivy, and hers is actually quite brief.
Hmm.
I rated it as one of my least favourites. I
Yeah,
said like I
I
wrote
would
down which
agree.
ones I preferred, which ones didn't. Um, Pumpkin bombs, she had gas in them. Batman was knocked out by them, but then used his awesome Batmobile to travel through the pumpkins, took most of them out, and managed to deliver a gas mask. And that's literally it. So that's the closest she gets to him. Good effort. The pumpkin bombs thing was quite funny because, again, obviously I knew Mark Hamill was Hobgoblin, and he makes a dig. He's like, pumpkin bombs. I'm like, you will be using them in 2 years' time, but whatever.
Oh, right. Is there a bit of a sort of almost an awareness
Almost a,
there? Yeah,
yeah, except this
yeah.
was even before
Ah,
that.
right.
So it was
Okay.
almost
Yeah,
like it
yeah.
was premonition almost. He was like pre burning himself, which I thought was quite funny. Do you want to touch on Two Faces?
Yeah. So Two-Face, I do want to say that one of the interesting things about the Poison Ivy thing, well, her sort of attempt at subduing Batman, is immediately after he gets first, he first sort of gets affected by the gas, she tries to unmask him, and then he sort of, forces her off. But then when he's on the floor, completely pretty much gone to
He
the dead.
straight up punches her in the
Well,
face.
he also commits a bit of assault, but she doesn't try again. She doesn't try to demask him again. He was basically in a
Yeah,
worse state, but she gives up on that sort of neglects and just walks away, which I thought was very very weird. But I suppose they have to give Batman some sort of
I think it's
chance.
because she got punched in the face.
Well,
Yeah,
I think I
and he
think I
did.
think.
Like he literally, his reactions were unfound. Like he literally just went from master
I
punch.
know.
There wasn't. It's like that's like an automatic response for him. Mask equals punch.
Yeah,
So I
no,
learned my lesson, if I'm honest.
that is fair. That is fair. I think she'd given it the one shot that she was willing to do, but he does also continue that trend of violence against women later on with with Harley Quinn. But yeah, for the
Hey, Batman's equal. He will beat you if you're a woman or a man. There's no gender inequality here.
well, equal opportunity Batman really. But I suppose for the Two-Face one, so basically he effectively was committing a robbery with the Two-Tone Gang, and Batman shows up, at which point he is swiftly subdued and brought along. So he basically enters the scene captured already. So Two-Face then decides to very, very uh, flamboyantly, uh, sort of James Bond villain-esque, uh, attach Batman to this giant, giant coin. So he's spread eagled on this giant coin, and he sets up this sort of what is it, a seesaw contraption with
Yeah,
this. He stacks up this gold bullion on top of this forklift, and so he has Batman on one end of the seesaw with the gold bullion raised on the other. So he effectively lowers the gold bullion, flings Batman in skyward, but at this point he'd been tossing this, his very iconic sort of like half ruined coin, and Batman had got a hold of it. So Batman soaring through the sky, sort of desperately, scraping at these ropes to try and free himself, and of course he does, and very gracefully lands and punches Two-Face straight in the face with the coin then landing upon the Two-Tongue Gang, and so that's the end of his scheme. Very, very swiftly
I have
wiped
some
out.
notes on this segment because one, you just said that the coin lands on the henchman. So if they was going to kill Batman, how the hell did they survive?
That is
Because I'm
true.
pretty sure in the next scene, unless it was two other henchmen, they're back up and like getting cuffed or whatever. Like they should be
Hmm.
dead, but okay, censorship. Um, I love Harvey Dent always has fair chance. It was 50-50, it always is. And,
Hmm.
and even though the gigantic coin clearly would have weighed over to Batman's side because of the extra weight, it was still like the whole ideals of fair. I love that.
Hmm.
Um, the other thing that got me, and I was a bit like, oh my god, was I think Batman says, or no, Two Face says that he was stealing $2 million in $2 bills. But then when he hits the money bags, it's all coins. So I was
True.
like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just thought that was really interesting. I was like, $2 bills, but they're coins, unless you can get $2 coins in America. But
I
he
think
said bills, so I went with that.
they're all bills nowadays, at least. I mean, I have no idea back in when it came out if it was
Yeah,
if they actually
it
had
was. It
penny
wasn't a
system. But
nitpick as such. It just made me laugh because I
yeah,
was expecting bills, and then I saw him hit the money bags, and all the coins rolled on him, and I was like,
yeah.
okay. Right. So, I will say that I preferred. So I picked two for best, two for worst.
Hmm.
I preferred Two Faces. That was in one of my preferred
I would definitely agree.
teams.
Definitely.
It's also based on a comic. I don't know which issue it was, but I know the gigantic coin arc was actually pulled from the comics. It was slightly different,
Hmm.
um, and it was Batman and Robin in the comics. So obviously that changed as well. But yes, that was a little nod to previous Batman lore.
Hmm.
So the Penguin one, I also put in my least favourite. It could
Yeah.
have been good, but it was a bit bad. And I will say now to viewers, I am terrified of pigeons and birds. So I was like, if that was me, Penguin would have won, no problem,
Yep.
because he was using basically jumping into it. Batman follows into a bird sanctuary and um, has the Batman laced in like a scent that poisonous birds start trying to jab him. After a certain amount of jabs, he would have passed out or potentially been paralyzed. He
Hmm.
uses a batarang to get the sprinklers to send them off. And then some big ass ostrich comes over and starts basically like he damages Batman's arm,
Yep.
starts pecking him, and Batman then has to grab one of these birds, which I must say looked so funny when he grabbed it because it literally looks like he is jabbing a knife into this ostrich. Like the bird is
Yeah.
dead still, just goes straight into him and runs off. And then Penguin flies off and escapes, so there is no repercussions for that one, which was quite interesting. And I did like that actually, but yeah, it's a little bit anticlimactic. But like I said, in the almost midst of that, you have the Joker call out Penguin for being too intelligent for everyone and been like, you gotta dumb it down. Which I also thought was quite funny because that could have been a nod to the audience.
Hmm.
Like kids aren't going to understand these words, like birdcage, not auditorium or auditorium, whatever it is, birdcage. And I was like, okay, maybe that's also a nod to the kids. I don't know. Um, yeah. So do you want to take the Joker segment?
Yeah, so the Joker segment's really quite interesting because it switches it goes all black and white as it effectively Joker like pulls out from under the table this old-fashioned TV and he switches it on and it switches from there to like a sort of another shot and it's all black and white as if it's TV from the era. And so basically, Joker has sort of co-opted this late night show, which gave you sort of very, very immediately personally gave me very like sort of connections to the most recent Joker film. Having a late night show
Mm.
and it being this whole sort of spectacle on
I
through
would just
public.
tell you, I would watch a talk show with Mark Hamill's Joker. Like, if they did a spin off on just him doing like a talk show, I'd be down for that. Like, I'd watch it.
That would be fantastic, actually. Him just interviewing all the different, like, the rogues gallery that's Batman's got, and then maybe even getting the man himself
I
on,
think,
and that'd be
yeah, and clearly
fantastic.
something going wrong or some sort of prank.
But very, so I did sort of get very like Eric Andre sort of vibes, where it's sort of like
Yes,
everything was going terribly wrong, but like Joker was acting like it was all part of it all. It was all
yeah,
part of the spectacle.
organized chaos almost.
Yeah, so basically what the Joker's plan is he has Batman strung up in this electric chair which is powered by laughter. And so he has Harley Quinn try it out. She gives a little chuckle, very, very little chuckle, and the whole thing starts, vibing up and shocking Batman. And then he basically starts releasing his trademarked laughing gas into the audience. So he has the whole audience sort of captive of this late night show, and they're all watching as Batman, and they slowly start building the laughter. They were laughing. There's a whole sort of like murmuring laughter in the background as this sort of scene progresses. We see Batman getting more and more shocked as the machine builds up as more and more laughter's going on. But thankfully, due to the intervention of a very quick-witted Catwoman, he's actually freed from the machine. So, I mean, also, I do want to mention that we do have the Joker sort of like walk up to the very, trussed up Batman and say, how's Robin? And I think that's a bit of you get absolutely no response from Batman, just dead silence. And I thought that was an
Oh,
interesting.
do you think he was on about Jason?
That's what I thought he was sort of hinting
I
at.
don't think it is, but I think, yeah, as someone who knows that, you could take it as that, and
Yeah,
yeah,
that's how
that was quite clever.
I thought.
Almost like a subtle nod to audiences.
Exactly. Yeah, I thought that was what he was going for, a bit of a bit of a jab at him.
I also noticed, I must say, obviously guns are a bit of a censorship issue, but they
Hmm.
just look like them ketchup and mustard like bottles in America where they like really long at the end.
Yeah,
That's what the
yeah.
guns look like. I was like, I can't suspend my disbelief for that one thing, but the
Hmm.
rest of it, clowns and crocodiles and stuff, that's fine. Oh, that reminds me, actually. Sorry to jump back, but Killer Croc actually has a segment they just don't show it. He's just like, I threw a rock, and I was just looking at me, it's like it was a big rock.
I would have loved to have seen that. Just this setup, and all you see is Killer Croc with this huge rock and just throwing it, and then Batman just sort of,
I just
you know,
love that.
re
That is so simple.
yeah, yeah. But I think it would just it'd be fantastic just to see Batman sort of just like slyly sidestep this enormous boulder, and that'd be that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, absolutely. Then there's just almost a bit of a so with them we've got the epilogue, which comes with a really well crafted twist, which
mhm.
as I'll let you talk about it because it was your first viewing. I'd like to know, did you see that coming or did it completely blindside you?
It honestly completely blindsided me. Like, I think because the way Killer Croc was acting, completely, stupid. Like, oh, I bet Batman's a robot. There's no way it's one man, sort of thing. And they have this whole sort of,
Yeah,
that argument about, the actual nature of Batman. And he's just so stupid throughout it all. And Joker's in so much control of it all that you do kind of just dismiss him. And so, like, it's set up
mm,
so well for him to be sort of completely unnoticed by the audience. But when he does turn out to be Batman, the way they do it is awesome. Like, I really really liked it because it wasn't sort of Scooby Doo like where he sort of ripped off a mask. It's this really really cool,
yeah,
really really cool shot because this Batman animated series you can sort of see in the top left. It's a very very distinct silhouette, and that sort of the pointed
yes,
ears, sort of completely black, and a lot of in the show it doesn't show any characterization, sort of characterization aside from his silhouette and these white eyes. And that's what you get is
yeah,
you see Killer Croc's profile from the side as all these gunmen sort of pull out their guns because his voice switches and they're all aiming at him, and the sort of like light shifts, and so you get the shadow going across him. And as the shadow goes across his face, you see his face switch from the very detailed, very colorful Killer Croc face to that sort of complete black slate with the white eyes, and it switches back again. So I thought it was a very, very
iconic.
visually awesome way to communicate that twist. Well, to be clear, the twist is that Killer Croc is Batman. So just
Yeah,
so we're clear with it.
just in case people didn't realise that. Yeah.
Yeah, just in case.
Um, yeah. So then after the twist, Joker, before the Batman reveal, Joker actually reveals that he has now got Catwoman.
Mm-hmm.
And that's essentially why Batman was there, to find out where Catwoman was being held. She was at a cat food processing factory, of course she was. She's put on the production line as, you know, the typical trope of damsel or guy in distress tied to something
Yep.
mechanical. Harley Quinn basically calls his bluff and is like, "Come near me and I'll turn it on." She turns it on. He stops Harley Quinn, and I did write, there was a convenient lever right by him where he punched Harley Quinn just to be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna turn
Yeah.
this off now." I was like, "Okay, cool." And then they have a little Batcat moment, which I'm not gonna lie, I am a huge Batman Catwoman shipper.
Mm-hmm.
Not Talia al Ghul, nah, Catwoman. I'm all about him and Catwoman. I love
Yep.
that dynamic. And I think they capture that quite well, especially how they did in Batman Returns. I think that's where it all stemmed from for me.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, that was a nice little moment. I think, you know, just to finish it off on.
So I guess one of the key points would be is you know we've chosen this as our first episode, and so maybe you could elaborate
Yeah,
on what that sort of the impact of this episode, or you know, the Batman animated series has had for you on you know the way
yeah,
you know.
of course. So I chose this episode purely because it's one that I am quite fond of. There is a few others that I'd like to come pick on down the line. I know
Hmm.
Heart of Ice is absolutely going to be one. I'd also like to touch on Batman Beyond, because I
Yep.
think that, you know, was the perfect sequel for Batman. But
Hmm.
essentially, Batman the Animated Series alongside Spider-Man the Animated Series was where it all kickstarted for me, for my love of comics, superheroes, all that sort of stuff, as well as other brands that we will touch on down the line. But these two
Hmm.
were quite big game changers. I had all the Batman memorabilia. I've still got, I think, in my loft, I've got a quite large teddy that's about 10 inches of the 90s animated Batman. As you can see behind me, I've got the Blu-ray set. As soon as I found out that was coming out, I was like, I've got to own that. And the transformation of the like non-Blu-ray to Blu-ray format is insane. Like there is a huge difference. It's worth just looking on YouTube if you're not willing to invest. But I would invest, to be honest, because it looks even more perfect, and that's like it's almost timeless because of it.
Hmm.
But yeah, this series was really, you know, it was gritty, it was dark, and I was into that sort of stuff, you know, from a young age. You know, I was into them sort of movies. I watched things that were a bit older for me, and I loved just that there was a lot of adult tones. And obviously, you don't pick that up as a kid, but as watching it again as a teen and an adult, you pick up on other things. And I'm like, oh man, that's really dark. Like this episode was quite tame. Like, okay, yeah, it was times I almost killed Batman, but that's like a flavour of the week. But there were some episodes, like I said, the aforementioned Heart of Ice. That's just insane. Like watching that as an adult, it's just a completely different thing. But yeah, this started a lot for me, especially with Batman. Unfortunately, obviously, then like the first film I got to watch in cinema, like of age, and to understand it was Batman and Robin, so not a great contrast. Um,
That's
and
quite
then obviously you
unfortunate.
had the Dark Knight. Yeah, I mean, at the time I loved it, and like I'm not gonna lie, as an adult, I love it even more because of Arnie's puns. Like it's
Yeah.
god awful, but I love it. Like I'm like, chill everyone, chill, and I'm like, I am here for this stupid
It
movie for stupid times. Whereas this, like when I first bought the box set, I just smashed through the entire box set over a good couple of weeks. You know, you just switch
Mhm.
off, enjoy what your childhood gave you, and I think if people haven't watched this, if you are, even if you're a casual Batman fan, this is something you should watch just to understand. If you don't want to get into the comics, or you think there's too many comics to find, you're not sure what cartoons or films to watch to jumpstart, this is the perfect gateway into it.
Yeah.
It has enough for hardcore fans. It has enough to, you know, bring fans into it slowly. And yeah, and then you've got, you know, follow-up seasons. You've got the new animated series. You've got the Justice League and the Justice League Unlimited series, which has the same voice actor of Kevin Conroy, and Mark Hamill comes back as Joker. And then you've got, as I said, Batman Beyond, which again is something we will touch on down the line, because that is the perfect like follow-up series for anything
Definitely,
really.
definitely.
Um, yeah. So, how about you? I mean, obviously, this was my pick, and this meant
Hmm.
a lot to me. But you said you watched it when you were younger. Obviously, did it have much of an impact, or what was your first big Batman experience?
Well, like for me, that would be this version of Batman is the one that sticks in my head the most. Like
Yeah.
I'm a little bit younger than you, so I wasn't sort of in the '90s era sort of as much. I was more so the early 2000s. So this representation of
Yeah.
Batman was the one that was the most prevalent at the time, and I think it's the most iconic for me at least. I wouldn't say it's the most one I resonate the most with, but in terms of when I think of Batman visually, that is what I think of.
Yes.
And it is,
Yes.
you said with Mark Hamill's Joker, I think there have been so many competitive versions of the Joker that, we've had Joaquin Phoenix's fantastic performance, which is extremely gritty and far more, you know, down to earth, more realistic take,
Grounded. Yeah.
very, very well rounded. And we also had Heath Ledger's utterly captivating performance, which it was extremely popular with, and deserved all the accolades that it got him.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of the character of the Joker, rather than a specific sort of iteration of the Joker, when I think of the Joker, I think of Mark Hamill's Joker. The
Yeah.
tone,
Agreed.
the delivery, just all of it, the way the character design, far more cartoonish, but I feel like that, it literally is a cartoon, but in terms of very exaggerated, very tall and very big shoulders, and the purple jacket, and his face and everything is far more animated than others, but it doesn't have the sort of, I guess, camp of, say, Jack Nicholson's version of the Joker. It's much more, he's still dangerous, but he is this animated evil, so to speak, rather than a sort of, well, I guess a joke, really. He is still a villain. And I think for me, that sort of these iconic well, for me personally, those are the iconic versions of these characters, and they're the ones that I sort of base any other, versions of these characters upon effectively. This is the sort of foundation when I think of Batman that I'd work upon.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, I think the one a lot of fans on forums and pages that I follow, and I follow the same suit, is when you're reading a comic of Batman,
Hmm.
who instantly do you use as the voice when you're reading Batman, when you're
Yeah.
reading Joker? And it's always Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill. I must say though, and we may touch on the film that they star in, so I won't give anything away. But um, John DiMaggio of
Oh yeah.
Gears of War, Futurama,
Hmm.
Adventure Time fame, he plays a Joker in a particular Batman film, and
All
it
right.
is definitely a very close second to Mark Hamill. Um, yeah, massive, massive, massive props to John DiMaggio. Rate it a lot. And even Bruce Greenwood, who has gone on to play Batman for quite a while.
Hmm.
I think he is from NCIS.
And oh,
He's the main guy in that. Yeah, he voices
Jethro
Batman.
Gibbs. Really?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
Wow.
he
I didn't know that. I mean, I
he
was a huge NCIS fan back in the day. I used to watch tons of it.
Yeah, exactly. When I googled it, I was like, wait, what? I was like, damn, he really pulls it off. And I can also
Wow.
see it. Maybe it's an older live action, but it definitely
Yeah.
works. But yeah, he's portrayed Batman in quite a few things from like Young Justice, and then also a few of the DC animated films.
Hmm.
So yeah, yeah, just uh, it's hard to dethrone the original two, but
Hmm.
there are some very big contenders down the line. Um, yeah, so what else we got? Okay, so brief overview. So rate the episode. One bin poor, 10 bin it was a masterpiece.
Honestly, I wouldn't say it's a masterpiece because I think it's a very strong episode. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't set our standards that high straight away. I think we've got to
Yeah.
give ourselves some rigor. So I'd say it's a strong eight. I'd say it's a strong eight. Particularly raising it up is the twist. If it didn't have the twist, it wouldn't be as high in
Yes.
my opinion because it's the way that the
Yes.
twist is delivered and how unexpected it is. I mean, we've probably ruined that for a lot of viewers now, but aside from that, how unexpected the twist is and the way it's delivered, it sort of bumps it up, I think. So, what would you
Yeah,
say?
agreed. And also, I know I would agree. I'd probably give it an eight.
Hmm.
Surely, I'd give it more if there was more Batman, but also I'm very understanding that less Batman is good in this. Like, he literally has, what, 3 lines?
Yeah.
So, again, if you were a new person to Batman, wouldn't use this as a starting off point because you wouldn't get much Batman. As a diehard fan, who's someone who loves it, understands it, knew what was coming, yeah, 100% love it. So give it an eight.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think even with the twist, even if you do know, because obviously I watched it knowing what was happening, I enjoyed it more because I was looking at how Killer Croc was being, I was looking at how he's acting, and I was like, damn, that's really good. Like, it really is. There is no illusion or, alluding to the twist until they literally just throw it on you. Like,
Yeah.
it's perfectly well done, and there's a fine line between randomly pulling a twist out of thin air and dropping little seeds throughout.
Yeah.
But this one was one of the twists where it works so well for not having any seeds because it would have less impact. So
Hmm.
yeah, 8 out of 10 probably for me for sure. Um, yeah, I mean most episodes are 7, 8 and above.
Yeah.
But we will eventually one day get to the 10s out of 10s. Um, Best hero moment for you in this episode?
uh, this is gonna sound terrible, but the bit where like he just sort of leans over and pulls the lever at the bend with Harley Quinn. He doesn't say a thing, and she's hyping it. She's like, "You got to choose between one of us. There's not enough time." And he just kind of looks at it, and then like looks over, and then he just opens this box and pulls the lever, and then he just looks at her, and she's like, "Oh shucks." And I think,
Do you know what that is? That's a I'm Batman, get out clause. Like, you know how everyone's excuses, he's Batman. That was literally, I'm Batman. There's a
yeah,
lever there.
yeah. I just thought it was so fantastic that how. It was just super cool. I know it's kind of silly. You think it's like almost like a Deus Ex Machina. It's a cop out, but I feel like
Yeah.
it really showed. It contributed to like Harley's character because she's like, oh, he totally immediately saw through my very hastily constructed poor plan, and then I swear that there's once it cuts the camera away to sort of outside before we see everyone getting arrested and Catwoman and Batman are on the roof. I
Yeah.
swear there's a punch sound effect. I swear,
Really? Okay,
I
I didn't hear that.
swear,
I'd have to go back.
I swear that there is because it just clicked in my because Harley Quinn says oh like she alludes to the fact that he's gonna beat her up after that, but as much as that may
Yeah,
be
they need
justified,
to.
but
Yeah, it's not that with that whole relationship could be a whole podcast in itself. So I don't think we'll ever
well,
touch on that.
yeah, I just thought
Um,
that was quite a funny little hint. I could be wrong, but
I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that.
I swear there's a
I wonder if
punch
anyone
sound
else
effect.
thought
Yeah, I want.
that. I was torn between my moment. I mean, the twist was really awesome, and that is such a
Mm,
good Batman moment. Um, but because it's a bit on the nose and a bit obvious, I kind of like the coin escape. I'm not gonna lie, it was because from what I remember reading of the comic version, it's a very like unbelievable way of escaping.
mhm.
I don't remember the details. I just remember being like, that's far fetched. Whereas you saw Batman again about planting seeds. You saw him swing for Harvey. He could have grabbed it then. So it wasn't like he just randomly managed to find the coin. There was a scene where it potentially was taken,
Yeah.
and then he escaped. Yeah, I think that was my kind of like get in there, boom. Um, Most villainous moment for you, or
Uh,
stand out for a villain?
well, like I said, within the context of which I'm viewing it, the bit where Joker goes up to Batman and asks, "How's Robin?" I feel like within the context that I was associating it
Yeah,
with, I feel like that resonated with me as a distinctly like cold, cold comment to be making. Within what I understood, and I could be totally wrong. It could just be a nice little like, "How's Robin?" sort of thing. But of course, I feel like the undercurrent there maybe I'm reading into it, but
Yeah, okay,
with that
okay. I'll
undercurrent,
give you that.
I feel like it's in my mind the most you know villainous act in the show. Not even trying to kill Catwoman. It's just cold.
Yeah. 2 seconds. The bloody cats came in and the door shut. Let me just open it for her. Go on. Go on. Go on.
We'll be right back. We're just having some technical difficulties.
Yeah, she likes to sit on this chair, so when someone is saying it, she looks at you with disgust and detest. So I just took her out.
Yeah, typical cat behavior.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I'm going to throw a bit of a out there choice for my villainous moment
Hmm.
at the very end, and it's only very quick and you'll miss it. But after Batman captures Joker, Catwoman goes to check on him, and Harley literally sucker punches her with one of them like Jack in the Box punch bags. And she
Oh,
punches her in the back of the head and knocks her out. And I was like, Jesus, that's really brutal. Like, damn, okay, that's my winner. That is.
it's funny you mentioned that because what the Joker says before that, he said, he's on the floor and he says to Catwoman, he's like, you failed to forget that I have another ace up my sleeve, which was the exact card that
Yeah,
he'd pulled from his sleeve during the poker game. And so, immediately after that, Catwoman gets knocked out with. I swear it was one of those punching gloves attached to a revolver that that
it was
Harley
a
Quinn. It was
revolver.
a
Yeah, I know. I
revolver,
know. It
and
was
she
just on
hit.
a spring.
Yeah, so it
All
must
I
have hurt
remember
like
is the
hell.
glove and the spring, like
Yeah.
bashing it straight in the back of the head. I was like, that's like Harley Quinn's a brutal sod sometimes.
Yeah, no, she's cold, but I think it was also you mentioned as well that the voice actress, sorry, for Harley Quinn, she has that
Yes.
established sort of Boston drawl, which is so sort of iconic. And
Mm.
I think in listening to when we think about Suicide Squad, I haven't seen the latest rendition, but the
It's
original,
pretty good.
and you need to get around to watching, but the original pretty terrible version still has Harley Quinn in
Yeah.
it, and it's so clearly obvious how heavily what's her name? What's
Margot Robbie.
Margot Robbie. Sorry, I've forgotten. It's so painfully obvious. Well, not painfully, but it's extremely obvious how hard she's going for that original Harley voice
Yeah.
style. It's having not watched for many years the animated series, and then hearing her speak with the context of more recently, seeing Harley
Yeah.
Quinn, the Margot Robbie version. It I just like it just it sounded almost
It makes
identical.
sense. It absolutely makes sense.
Yeah, no, of course.
I like Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. I just think how she's handled is where it kind of goes a bit wrong. Like in Suicide Squad, like obviously there was a whole thing about how they glamorized Joker basically being an abusive prick to her.
Hmm.
And a lot of people were like, "Oh, I wish I had a relationship like them too." And I'm like, "You are completely missing the point in that. Like, it's been touched on comics many times. He's not good for her." And then they tried to change that with obviously Birds of Prey, which was again mediocre, but good Harley interpretation. But she's sprinkled around Suicide Squad without spoilers, just enough for me to go, yeah, she's still pretty good as Harley Quinn. I enjoy her.
Yeah, because I feel like with the first one and maybe with Birds of Prey, having her as probably the central character, she's not the central character in Suicide Squad, but she's one of the major ones, and especially over all the
Mm.
marketing, I feel like maybe we're at a point where she's a little bit we're oversaturated with Harley Quinn now. Like I feel like taking
Yeah, I think they need to take a break.
yeah.
I mean, I know she's Margot Robbie's unsure whether she's going to continue.
Hmm.
I could see them doing a Harley and Ivy movie. Obviously, the Harley Quinn series is quite well acclaimed, and
Yep.
that's essentially Harley and Ivy. So I reckon they'll probably eventually do that. It would just be casting a Poison Ivy to match Margot Robbie's kind of personality as such,
Yeah.
um, which I think would be quite hard. I don't know who would cast as Poison Ivy anymore. Do you have any ideas?
Well, I suppose when I was thinking sort of Karen Gillan. I don't know. She's a sort of
From Daredevil.
no, she's
Oh
she's
no, Nebula.
Nebula. Yeah. So
Sorry, yeah,
she
Nebula.
she is a
Okay, that could work.
redheaded Scottish, but also the way she plays Nebula is very sort of inhuman, and I feel like if they sort of contrast, sort of Poison Ivy being a bit more, less human, I guess, contrasted with, I
Hmm.
guess, Harley's more sort of craziness, then I think you get like a pretty
Yeah,
interesting dichotomy there. But of course, that may not necessarily fit the character, but personally, I think that would be relatively cool to see.
that's a really good shout. Actually, I was trying to think of someone myself. Um, I I don't really know. Obviously, I know she's a bit older, but I was recently watching the Good Show, the morning show, and I could see Reese Witherspoon, really far left kind of choice,
Fair.
but she has almost that, not dumb, but almost that innocent sexiness to her, and but she can be very strong and independent and very, stands for her belief. And I know that's just a character, but I think that's how Poison Ivy is conveyed. And yeah, I'm going to say Reese Witherspoon.
I think that's an like you said, a very far left one. I wouldn't sort of, very far out suggestion. I wouldn't think of Reese Witherspoon as that sort of character, but I could see it.
I just think they need to try far less stuff. I mean, Ben Affleck, for example, was never a
Oh,
contender for Batman in a lot of people's eyes. He
uh,
is phenomenal. I'm
did you
not
honestly
a
think
fan.
so? I personally, I
The writing for him was shocking in
yes,
in
yeah,
Batman vs
yeah.
Superman and Justice League, but him as Batman, like I will watch that um, warehouse scene day in day out, and I will also watch the armored Batman v Superman scene, and when he's like, "You're not brave, men are brave." I'm like, "You have got this down." To be fair, he's
I
not he's not my absolute favorite. That is Michael Keaton, but he's definitely my second favorite.
I think oh, this may be slightly controversial, but I feel like he comes off way better as Batman and Batman versus Superman because Henry Cavill's
Oh
Superman is
yeah,
pretty bland, honestly. I I
yeah.
physically and appearance wise, I think he's a fantastic Superman. The guy clearly is built for it, but sort of
Oh yeah, Henry Cavill's awesome.
just
I
like
would put it down to the writing and studio interference. I'm going to have to say I'm one of them
yeah.
people that will back it. I'm not one of these, Snyder bots who's trashing the universe and going on internet forums. I like Batman vs Superman for
Hmm.
certain scenes. I haven't watched it in its entirety since I watched the director's cut. I will watch more scenes from it because I enjoy that,
Yeah.
but it's a lot to take in, and I struggle with it. I've watched some of the Zack Snyder's Justice League, and again, there's a lot going for it. There's a lot still to improve, but we've also kind of seen the studio interferences and what happens there. I'd like
Hmm.
to see what he could do free reign. Um, Cavill as Superman, he's a great actor. I won't deny that, but I'm not a huge Superman fan, so I don't really buy into it either way.
Hmm.
I could take it or leave it really. I'm more of a team Batman, and yeah, Ben Affleck is great. Michael Keaton is great, and I'm very excited to see them both back in the Flash in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, oh God, I was literally just today watching it, sort of a deconstruction of how terrible the Flash TV series has become recently. Um,
Oh yeah, I don't want to touch on that.
yeah, I think that
First
maybe
two seasons were insatiable, and then it just all started going down the toilet.
that's a topic for another video, but another podcast.
All I
But
will say is, did you see that they were using flashlight sabers in the latest
I did,
episode? I don't
yes,
watch it.
lightning bolt,
Yeah, I just saw
lightsabers.
someone. Yeah, lightning bolt lightsabers. I was like, that no, no. And they've. I'm not going to lie. Wally West and Bart Allen are two of my favourite speedsters, two of my favourite characters, and
Hmm.
Suits and the whole just kind of arc. Well, with Wally because I watched with Wally in it. that arc was shocking, and the costume Bart is in just looks terrible. So yeah, I dipped out after season 3.
No, well, I think, yeah, I think that's definitely a smart decision, to be honest, because I haven't watched, any of the latest seasons. I've watched a few episodes of when it's, first started coming out, and I've seen a few episodes of Arrow as well across the time. But my God, so
I will give you season 1 is extremely good,
yeah,
very well written. There's some good, character arcs. It's paced quite well. There's a good twist in it. Season 1's worth a watch, but
hmm.
then you have to carry on, and that's where I'd struggle.
I suppose it's also difficult for people, if they're coming into the show, to sort of invest in something if they know it's just going to go down the toilet. And I think
Yeah, exactly.
it's also rough when people have these, iconic versions of these characters in their mind. Like if I think of the sort of, the Justice League Flash, he was awesome. You know, he was
Agree.
effective and awesome, and I feel like in the show maybe he comes off a bit more, I don't know, a bit goofy.
Useless,
Yeah, yeah,
useless.
yeah.
Like they've turned from what I've heard and read and spoke to the people about. It's gone from Flash is the Flash is fast man
Hmm.
life. He needs people to encourage him to. No, you need all these people around you, otherwise you can't be villains.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
no, it's not called the Flash Team show. It's called the Flash. But
Hmm.
yeah, I haven't watched it, so I wouldn't be able to comment too much. But I've just heard it's gone pretty downhill. So I'm kind of out of that. I'll just wait for the Flash movie next year and hope that brings me something.
Well, speaking of, I think if we get back more to the Batman side of things, what is, I
Yes.
guess, your opinion on the Batman movie coming out? We've seen it been filming in
Oh, I
Glasgow
can't wait. I
recently.
can't wait.
Are you
Robert
excited
Patterson.
then? With Robert,
Can't wait.
what is your opinion
And
of the casting of Robert
I'm
Pattinson?
I'm I'm all for it. I don't. The Twilight thing is 10 years old, and you know I remember when the casting came out for Heath Ledger as the Joker, and the
Hmm.
internet were like, he's going to be shit. He's Brokeback Mountain. He's a Knight's Tale. He's not going to be good enough to be the Joker. And I actually remember being like on the message boards, being like, give him a chance. I reckon he could be really good. And there you go. He was one of he is one of the most recognisable Jokers we've got
Hmm.
of this decade, of probably for many years to come. Same with Ben Affleck. A lot of people are like, oh, Ben Affleck, Daredevil, he was crap in that. He won't be very good in Batman vs Superman. Again, I was like, just give him a chance. I reckon he could be good. So I'm doing the same with Robert Patterson, and I'm hoping I won't be disappointed. I think he looks good, to be honest. I watched The Lighthouse, and I thought he was fantastic in that. So,
Yeah, he
you
was
know,
phenomenal
actors
in
can
it.
change.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, actors can bring it around, and I'm very excited. I remember when the trailer came out, I think I watched it about 6 times and was just like, oh my god, this looks so good. I also am very excited for Colin Farrell as Penguin, which I know is apparently only going to be a very small role, but perfect casting choice. And in the trailer, he looks unrecognizable.
Yeah, no, that is true. I think one of the things this is a really small nitpick, but I just got to say it because it's been on my mind for a while since I think we're thinking about this the new Batman movie. Is one of the shots they have of like it in production in Glasgow is Batman all suited up on his bat bike, but he doesn't have a
Yeah,
cape, and for,
I think that's just
it's
production,
probably
though,
just
isn't it?
production. It's probably production, but I just seeing him without a
Oh,
cape,
look
it
crap
just
if you didn't have the cape.
yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know if they. I mean, I know
no, it's definitely.
he's definitely has it from the trailer, but I just
Yeah, he will have it
yeah.
because there's shoots going on for Flash at the moment, and Affleck's Batman is on a
Hmm.
bat pod or bat bike, whatever, and he's not got a cape either. So it's probably for health and safety because,
Yeah.
let's be honest, in real life, the wheel would catch the cape and pull you back and suffocate you, or your head would get caved into a tire. So you know,
I mean, I
but
just
yeah, I'm
always
very
think of
very excited.
from The Dark Knight, the bit where he's driving a Joker. That has to be real
Yeah,
cape. That has to be the way it flares behind him.
you reckon? We'd have to have a look actually the production
Because it
behind
just,
it.
I don't, probably you're right. It must be a nightmare to try and film just a random piece of cloth going over. And like you said, the health and safety of it getting caught and stuff. But it just something
Yeah,
about that resonated with me. Just him without a cape was just stuck on my mind. But I personally think that Robin Pattinson could do a fantastic Batman. I think as he is a Death Grips fan, he has the heart to it. You know, he'll convey the darkness through that, I think. And I'm interested to maybe sort of enter a different era of Batman again. You know, we've had the sort of Ben Affleck and the Zack Snyder Justice League Batman, and that's been,
Wow, you're going to get a mixture next year. That's the thing. I mean,
yeah.
next year we've got the Patterson Batman coming out and then the Flash movie coming out. So you've got a bit of a sprinkle for everyone.
Hmm.
I'm extremely excited to see Michael Keaton return. I've been waiting for that for years, and I'm kind of hoping in my, dreams that probably won't come true that it will set up a Batman Beyond film. I'd love to see that. I think that's been a long time coming. And with Michael Keaton as an older Bruce Wayne would just be perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that they're also bringing back sort of older iterations of the characters because I know I've sort of heard the rumors for the newest Spider-Man film. They're also sort of bringing back the Andrew Garfield and also the one and only
Yeah,
Tobey Maguire from
I
the the,
remember.
the very classic Sam Raimi
I
Spider-Man
want to
films.
believe. I do want to believe it, and I'm hoping. And what adds fuel to that fire recently is Kevin Feige has apparently said, and I don't know if it's true or it's just a rumor mill, but Kevin Feige said there is not going to be a trailer. It's going to be you'll just go and watch it to enjoy it, which makes me think you're hiding something huge if you're not releasing a trailer. Because they
Hmm.
even released trailers for Endgame and Infinity War, and they didn't give much away then. But if you're that dedicated to hiding plot details in a film, something big's going on. Um, I know there's been some toy releases and spoilers, but doesn't give much away. So I don't know how
Hmm.
much they're going to be able to hide. But yeah, I really hope they do bring back Maguire and Garfield. It'd be beautiful.
I think it would be just a mess, I think, but it'd be a really
A
fun mess.
mess.
Well, I just think you can't. They all have such
There is a
different.
lot going on.
Yeah, they all have different tones. They're Spider-Man, and I think what happened. I guess the sort of inspiration was into the Spider-Verse. I guess that sort of laid the foundation for this sort of you know
Mm,
crossover style stuff, which worked really well in an animated format, but I don't know how that'll translate over to more live action sort of stuff.
I think it would work perfectly in a live action if it's done with the same dedication and time. But that was in production for quite a while.
Hmm.
Um, and who knows, maybe this new Spider-Man has been. I also have heard rumours that Willem Dafoe's coming back as Green Goblin, and
Oof.
you've also got, you've got, is it Alfred Morena? I can't remember, but you've got the original Spider-Man 2 Doc Ock coming back. You've got Jamie Foxx
Oh,
as
yeah.
Electro, and we don't even know if there's actually another new villain coming into it, or they're just going to go for older school stuff. So it's either going to be really good and give us all the fan service we want, or it's going to be absolute dog crap, and it could ruin everything. But I don't feel like it's gonna. I'm being hopeful.
I mean, I demand to see Paul Giamatti's Rhino. You know, we were hinted at that at the end of. I wanted
Mm,
to see more of a
not bothered.
giant mecha Rhino. That's on my wish list.
Um,
But
no. I mean, I was on Reddit a few days ago actually, and I was doing like fan castings, like looking at that.
oh yeah.
And if they bring Willem Dafoe back as Green Goblin, I'm very happy. But I will tell you now, my dream cast for Norman Osborn Green Goblin is Bryan Cranston.
Bryan Cranston. Really?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Do
He
you want to
has.
elaborate on that? That's
I mean, the businessman side is very obvious. Walter White, the
yeah.
dark, evil businessman. But they show glimmers of it in Breaking Bad. But if you go back and watch Malcolm in the Middle, or you watch, even Drive and Argo, there's hints of lunacy in his voice, and like the episode in Breaking Bad, Crawl Space, when he does that laugh at the end and he just loses the plot. I'm like, you are Green Goblin. You could do that. No doubt at all for me.
Wow. I hadn't ever really considered Bryan Cranston for that kind of role. But I know, especially you mentioning about that laugh from Breaking Bad. You I could, that's far more convincing for me now. Attaching the two
Yeah,
together.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Right, so we've kind of trailed off, which is absolutely fine. It's Spider-Man, Batman, it's all the same.
Yeah.
Um, I was going to do a little segment called the Silver Screen versus Out the Pages, so looking
Hmm.
at any alternative version of the media, so be that a comic book, a movie, a manga, or a comic adaptation. So in this case, we are watching the animated series, and this episode actually was slightly loosely based on. Um, it was a Batman issue 293, and
Hmm.
it's called "Where Were You the Night Batman Was Killed." Um, the whole concept is slightly different, but also there's some similarities. So, Batman has gone missing and presumed dead by all of his rogues, and basically they have villains give their testimonies um, to say if they did or didn't kill Batman.
Okay.
Um, Yeah, I obviously won't go into too much because we've spoiled this episode. I won't spoil um the comic. It's
Hmm.
a 4-part series, so it goes over issue 291 to 294. Um, yeah, and you can find it in quite a few of the recommended readings. So like the trade paperbacks, graphic novels,
Hmm.
omnibuses. You can find it within there. But yeah, I haven't read it myself. I just knew it was loosely based on something, so I probably will give that a read just to see if they picked up any significant scenes from it. And then next on our list, before we wrap this up, was
Hmm.
rate my hero and villains. Yeah, I thought we could kind of rate our hero and one villain or the villains, however you want to do it,
Hmm.
each week, and we'll kind of make a leaderboard, and then eventually they can start doing a little tournament against each other.
Yeah.
So obviously, heroes, we've got Batman. So 4 categories. We've got heroism. So we'll do out of 5. So heroism.
Well, I mean, is punching women villains very, very, very heroic? Is that like are we basing it off the like the very, Homeric sort of heroic ideal, or
However
maybe more
you
the
want to base it, it's your opinion.
I would say for heroism because he's not is he he's only really saves himself and Catwoman. He doesn't save others pretty much. I mean, aside from capturing villains that would harm others,
Mm,
most of their attempts on his life, and he's just surviving them basically. So
yeah.
I would say 3 because he does save Catwoman.
Okay. Yeah, I would probably say the same. I'm gonna put him with 3.5 because I think that twist was very smart, very heroic, and I think if he hadn't have done that, he wouldn't have saved anyone.
Yeah,
So overall, he has a 6.5. Um, Badassery. How
badassery.
cool was he in this episode? Did he do anything that you thought, damn, that was hardcore?
I would say 4. I'm not going to give him the full 5 because, I've got to temper our
Yeah.
expectations.
Okay.
But I'd say 4 for
Yeah.
the awesome twist, obviously, the way he.
Yeah. Agreed. Exactly the same score.
Mm.
Um, Memorability of him in this episode. Does it stand out? Just in general, really.
Would I say it's sort of, I guess, character defining? I wouldn't say so much that. I'd say probably 4. I'd say a 4 for memorability in terms of this is him. It shows Batman against all of his rogues gallery. It shows him absolutely trumping all of them, and it shows him and his relationship with Catwoman. I think it just encapsulates almost everything that you'd want to address with Batman. Almost, of course, there is some mention of Robin. There's no Albert, and there's no sort of, his alter ego or anything like that. There's none of the more complex side of things. But I think Batman as a superhero, it sort of covers all of the all the talking points, I guess.
Okay. I gave him 3.5. I think whilst there was very little of him, it worked well. Like you said, he was against all of his rogues.
Hmm.
But I think there's more memorable Batman within other episodes. So yeah, 3.5
Hmm.
for me. And then Victorious. So how well did he win the day?
I think it was a pretty clean sweep for Batman. Saved Catwoman and got them
Yeah,
all. I'd probably have to say that that's like a five, right? Like
yeah,
he just
agreed.
dominated all of them. So I think that's as well as any sort of hero could do, really.
Yep. So I'm just gonna add up the scores, and we will see what Batman has for the first week. So
I think he scored quite highly.
he has. So mm, it's terrible right now.
The arithmetic's putting you on
He
the spot.
has scored. Yep, 31.
31.
Yep, 31 out of 40.
That's pretty
Not
strong
bad.
performance for
Not
Batman.
good. So we'll start a leaderboard as of next week. Villains. How do you want to do this? Because obviously there's multiple villains in this. Do you want to put them all under, or let's be honest, it was essentially a Joker subplot at the end of the day. It ran into the Joker.
Yeah.
So do you want to do Joker?
I feel like, yeah, we should definitely, you know, take the central
Okay.
figure, I
So
guess.
menacing slash dastardly.
I would, like I said, said mentioned this like twice so far. That comment about Robin, really, really,
Yeah.
really cold. So I think he scores a good four on that.
Okay. I I'm gonna say a three. It's middle of the row. The electric chair is pretty brutal.
Yeah.
Um, and the laughing gas. But again, I think joke that's tame Joker for what we can see.
hmm
Um, next one is so that kind of is similar to menacing slash dastardly. I think with menacing and dastardly, it's more of a the evil plot, whereas with the next segment is just darkness to it.
hmm
So for you, I'm assuming it'll be quite high because dark he makes a potentially a dead Robin joke.
Yeah, I should have really put that four in the darkness section then. I'd definitely put it there, and I think I'd probably go with the three
Andrew,
then.
if you want.
Yeah, I'd put the
Okay,
four in
so
the
four for
darkness
dark, three for
section.
menacing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, dark. I didn't read it as the dead Robin joke. I
hmm
did clock that and I kind of alluded to it, but I didn't run with that as his intention.
hmm
So again, it wasn't an overly dark one. It was more humorous Joker than not. So I'm going to give it
Yeah.
a 2.5, which
Okay,
that's
quite low.
absolutely fine.
I think I feel like
Middle of the road.
maybe I'm sort of overspending these points, giving it being a bit
That's
too
fine.
generous.
Um, so the next one is brutality. So as in actual acts of violence or
hmm
mental warfare. How does the Joker stand up?
T- I, I, I think Joker's brutality is much more calculated. I think in this episode he is just sort of playing around with Batman rather than, you know, an
Yeah,
aggressive, trying to break him down sort of style Joker. More just sort of going through the motions, kind of evil plot for Batman to fall kind of Joker. Still a good one.
it's just a day out, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, that's definitely what it is. It's less like, you know, an intense drive for revenge, more just sort of they
Yeah.
it's business as usual. So I'd say 1.5 for brutality.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
the electric chair
Yeah.
show was pretty brutal, but yeah.
I put two. I know it wasn't him, but he clearly gave Harley the orders to kidnap Catwoman and grind her up. That's not a Harley
Oh,
thing. That's a
true. Yeah,
Joker thing.
yeah,
Um.
true.
So yeah. Okay. And then last one is success rate. So how close were they to winning?
Um, say that again.
So success rate, how close were they to, been victorious? Did they actually nearly win the day? Were they anywhere near it? Was it,
Oh, well, as we discussed, it's a complete full sweep for Joker. So yeah, I think. Well, sorry,
okay,
no, that's me getting it wrong. It's a complete sweep for Batman, but I think Joker out of
Yeah,
all of them stood the closest chance of winning. I mean,
yeah,
he had Batman in probably the most convincingly defeated position out of all of them, rather than just a little bit tied up or a little bit knocked out. He had him fully trussed up
yeah.
on an electric chair, and he had the Catwoman
And he
captured as
only
well.
got through because of Catwoman.
Yeah,
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 and Batman only got out to Catwoman. So
exactly.
I've. What are you thinking?
I I'd say, well, compared to the others, he'd rank pretty well. So I'd say a three. Is that he got
Okay, yeah,
close,
I
but
put 3.5.
because it wasn't just him capturing Batman, he also then had the backup of having Catwoman captured as well, and potentially
Yeah,
round up into Catfeed.
exactly.
So yeah,
Oh, that really is dark when you think about it.
it,
Um,
it is.
so Joker only scored 19 out of 40, which for the Joker is pretty low. But I'm sure there's various Jokers we can bring in down the line who will most likely top that. I know for a fact the Dark Knight Joker would probably be in the high 30s, if not a lot more.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I think we're kind of coming to the end. I think I'd just like to end it with a bit of trivia about the episode, really.
Hmm.
Some people may know about it, some may not. It might even surprise you unless you've done the research on it.
I've done a bit.
So,
We'll see what
you
I
did a
missed
bit?
out.
Okay. So I'll just pick out some of the ones that interest me.
Hmm.
So, when Two-Face recounts how he tried to get rid of Batman, Ivy asks what becomes of the giant penny,
Hmm.
and he says they actually let him keep it. This penny actually is seen in the Batcave and in Batman Beyond as well. So it does continue to stay in there, which is a quite nice little Easter egg.
Oh, is this a
Um,
continuity of the coin then? That's interesting. That's cool.
exactly, yeah. So this kind of almost sets the origin, but yeah, you do see it quite a few
Awesome.
times. I remember it quite well. Um, we've already touched on it about the how clever the writers were by doing the cards at the beginning,
Hmm.
with Two Face having two cards. He also has half and half cream in his coffee. His story is the second anthology. And then the Joker makes a snide remark saying that he always sees double and always comes in second.
Wow, it goes deep.
What else is? Yeah, it does. Um, let's have a look. There's not too much on this one. Um, so what else was there? We mentioned that. Yeah, it's not really a lot. It's essentially about the things we've kind of already touched on.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, we touched on Hobgoblin.
Well, that brings us to the end of this first episode of the Nerd Impact podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and join us next week for a discussion of Genndy Tartakovsky's fantastic 2003 Clone Wars miniseries.